and welcome to another episode of Disaster Empire Quick Views. We're a podcast where we interview thought leaders and innovators in resilience. And I am really excited to have Erika Andresen with us here today to talk about quite a few subjects. But before we get started, I am going to flip the football over to her, so to speak, and ask her to talk a little bit about her background. Erika, thank you for being here, and really excited to get to talk to you today.
Thank you for inviting me. I feel very honored to get a platform to just talk to people. So my name is Erika Andresen, and I am the founder of Eaas Consulting, which is short for Erika as a Service. It's a nice play on software as a service because you get me and my expertise. And I endeavor to prevent small and mid-sized business owners from inadvertently killing their business because they don't know about business continuity. And I am a veteran. I was an active duty JAG for almost 10 years. I was a corporate lawyer before that, so I'm currently a recovering lawyer. And I am a professor of emergency management at the graduate level for the University of Texas in El Paso. And I am a published book author. I think that covers everything.
Yeah, and we're going to dive deeper into each of those, I think, as we go forward. So again, thank you to the audience. So glad you're here with us today. And Erika, can you tell me more about your consulting business today? As you said, you provide services to, I think, mid and smaller size organizations and help them to understand why they need to do disaster planning. But can you share more about how that evolved and really how it's been working with that client base today?
Yeah. So when I was in Afghanistan in 2016, I was finishing up my own MPA degree, and I was reading a business review article about business survivors of Superstorm Sandy. And they were all asked the same question, with the final question being, what are you doing to prepare for next time? And almost every single one of them said, oh, this isn't going to happen again. And I was like, wow.
Positivity bias.
Yeah. I'm like, you have no idea what's going to happen. And I was like, you need someone like me to tell you what you're doing wrong and how to fix it. Because in the military, we were doing continuity of operations as a standard for all of our missions. And then especially in Afghanistan, doing risk management at a super high level of, it's not just most likely, least likely, it's also most deadly. And there are a whole bunch of things that smaller businesses and medium-sized businesses could be using, and they weren't using. So when I got out of the military, it was my desire to have this kind of consulting business. Then COVID hit in the time I was progressing out of the military. And I was like, dang it, I just missed the boat. I'm going to be late to the party. And I had somebody say to me, Erika, you are your product. And I was like, yeah, you're right. Hence Eaas. And from that point, I was originally looking for jobs in the legal realm because it made sense, but it didn't really make sense because it had nothing to do with my purpose or what I was passionate about, which was disaster preparedness and response and resilience. So then I decided to go ahead and start my own business. And I really focused on the small and mid-sized businesses because I want to empower them by educating them about business resilience, because there's really no reason why that they're not doing business continuity aside from the fact they just don't know about it. Since all major companies, international corporations, financial institutions, higher education institutions, and the government have been doing it for decades. There's no secret. This is not a barrier to entry. You don't need to be part of a club. They all can learn about this and make use of it so they can survive and thrive.
Thank you for that. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. Whether it's describing it as insurance policy, you may never need it, but you want it around when you do, or however you explain it to your customer base. I wish you all of the best in building that message, because it is so important and so needed out there. And hey, I first came across you on LinkedIn with an ACP presentation you were giving on a whole community response. Can you share a bit about that presentation and why you're so passionate about that?
Sure. So the whole community response is part of a FEMA initiative started under the Obama administration with Craig Fugate. And when I was teaching, so at the same time that I started my consulting firm, I was also teaching Intro to Emergency Management for UTEP. And it was honestly just a blip in the textbook. It was mentioned at 2 points about this whole community response. And I was like, why don't they concentrate on this more? It means a lot more because it just makes sense. Where instead of having the government from upon high go down and give edicts to local government about, okay, this is how you're going to respond and this is how you're going to recover from a disaster, which also just wastes resources because you're giving people things that they don't need or want, instead empowering them to take some initiative and take agency over what happens to them in their preparedness, because they know better about a lot of things than the federal government can tell them. And that's the second factor, the psychological shift in the power of that, having that agency, because you go from being a victim where things happen to you to being a survivor where you live through things. And that does so much for people in their resilience. And I know it hits home for me because in the military, one of the things I did was prosecute sex assault, and knowing about being a survivor of sex assault and how much that means as opposed to being a victim, and really how people go through. And that's with any tragedy and any type of trauma. So having a whole community be responsible for this, I think, is just a no-brainer. It should be something that everybody automatically includes in their planning. Like I said, it doesn't waste resources. And I even created one of my classes within my course all about community resiliency. It wasn't even a textbook. And I was inspired by this book written by Rebecca Solnit. It's called Paradise Built in Hell. And it's about the communities that form in and after a disaster, because you can have people who don't know each other, who maybe previously hated each other, but you now have this incredibly human, tragic experience that you all share together, and you have to come together in order to survive and thrive afterwards. So what I mainly talked about in that particular lecture, and that's where I'm driven from to even talk about having this public-private joint venture, is everybody deserves to have a good life. And businesses provide integral services. No matter what you think about it, like if you just want something resembling normal after a tragedy, even if it means going to get a cup of coffee, if you have somebody who can provide that to you, that brings you to that sense of normalcy, and that brings you back, and it makes you want to wake up the next day and carry on. And just thinking about the different factions of a community, religious institutions, regular schools, not higher education institutions, hospitals, and small businesses, and what they really can do if they come together as a community with local government and putting their eggs in the basket together, just to make sure that everybody comes out on the end on the better side.
Isn't it wild that there wasn't anything already pre-developed for you to teach on in that area? Because I remember in my time working with emergency management, the mantra was, all disasters start local and they end local. And everything that we could do to empower the local community to take ownership of that event, and, with the full understanding that the resources from the government at any level would only be there temporarily. And it's up to the community, right, to rebuild and resume afterwards, and hopefully they'll be more resilient. But I love that message, and so glad that you're carrying that torch, because it's such an important one, and I think really overlooked right now. And disasters are not going away, as we know. Nope. Well, hey, here's a question that I ask all of my guests. How do you define resilience?
So it's funny, my personal definition of resilience differs from what I teach as the definition of resilience. So in my lectures, I'll say a lot about how resilience is capacity and ability, and actually bridging the gap between the two, because they're not the same. And how it leads you to return to normalcy. What I think about resilience is having the ability and the agility to get through something because you have the moxie. And I like this word moxie because you have the moxie to invest in it, mostly investing in yourself to go on and thrive.
I think that's a great definition. I like the word moxie too. It's kind of like a strength word, right? It isn't kind of your typical trauma-based or victim-based, viewpoint. And I think that's what happens to trauma survivors. In the best cases, they're able to become stronger, changed, obviously, but be able to survive and hopefully thrive through that event.
Right. We talk about getting back to normal, what's normal, but there's what was your old normal, and then the concept of what your new normal is. And having to come to terms with your new normal is, and deciding that you are going to continue. And I keep using the word thrive, but that's really what it's all about, is thriving in what is new to you now, because of everything has been changed and to a point taken away from you, but you can have this agency to do something about it.
Absolutely. Hey, you share that you're passionate about public administration. You've had your experience working in the military and about emergency management, but let's dive a little deeper. How did that come about for you?
So it's 100% because of impact. And when I was in the military, my first duty station, because I'd been a lawyer for 6-7 years before I joined the military.
Okay.
And every summer, we call it a PCS season. You lose people. They move, and then other people come in. We lost 8 people that summer, and they only gave us 4. So that left a lot of empty spots. And they're like, Erika, you're going to take your job plus 3 more. And I was like, oh, okay. And they go, and don't worry about this EOC legal advisor. It's not going to be anything. You have to go to a meeting once a quarter. You'll be fine. It's really not that big of a deal. I was like, okay. And then 2 weeks later, there was torrential downpour of rain every single night for almost a week, caused a state of emergency in Missouri where I was. I-44 was shut down because it was flooded for a couple of exits. The town around the installation was completely flooded. And I was like, oh, so wait, 1 meeting a quarter? I don't think so. And it was kind of like a trial by fire. I was thrown into this. And I really loved that I was making an impact, an immediate impact in things. And being the lawyer, I was able to, instead of saying, no, we can't do this because of various authorities, I was able to find authorities and then go, you know what, we can do this. We can help in this way. And that was being of service to a need that was immediate. And I was like, wow, I really enjoy this. And if I have to get out of the military at some point in the future, I choose to, what is a way I can expand upon this? And Mizzou was not too far up the road from where I was in Fort Leonard Wood, and not too far up the road, that's like an hour and 45 minutes, and decided to get an MPA from Mizzou because I was like, if I'm ever going to get out, I could probably use this after I'm done. So that's how I married the two.
Excellent. Well, hey, so your book, How Not to Kill Your Business, is obviously related to your client base and working with organizations. Can you share with us how that came about and who really the audience is for it, who should read it, and how you structured the book?
Sure. So the book came about when someone recommended, in order to increase my eminence in the field, that I should write a book. And they kind of meant it from an academic perspective. Yeah. And, gave me tips on how to get case studies and get into the Harvard Business Review. And I was like, I don't want to write this book. Never mind, read it. So at the time I was, having been a professional doing professional writing I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And my students at the time had just finished teaching that semester were like, we love you as a professor because you don't talk like a professor. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Great compliment.
And they're like, no, you're amazing because you don't talk about theory. You talk just like real person and you have experience. And I was like, that's how I want to write my book. And then I started doing some market research on books on the topic. And a lot of them were from an academic perspective. And a lot of them were written by other continuity professionals for continuity professionals. I was like, but the people who need to know about this are never going to find it. And that's where I started to flip the script on not using industry terms. I mean, how to not kill your business is pretty much a layman's terms of saying, well, what exactly is business continuity? It's how to not kill your business. And that's who my intended target was. All those mom and pop shops who will never invest in business continuity. They can move the needle significantly by reading the book. And the book is really just a once over of things that you need to know about business continuity. And I ask a lot of questions throughout because it's a very conversational tone. And I even do it with a music theme because I don't like doing anything boring and dry. I mean, my sense of humor is dry, but I don't like being dry. And believe it or not, so the chapters I've titled with music songs, there are lyrics that forecast the theme of the chapter. It was not hard at all to find these songs. And I was like, I can't even believe how quickly it was done. So like Rolling Stones, David Bowie, Wu-Tang Clan, Foo Fighters, Nine Inch Nails, Earth, Wind, and Fire. I mean, that's just a couple of them, just to give you an idea of, I made this fun. I made business continuity fun, and it's for business owners to learn about it. And then I found my market not only included business owners, but other business continuity professionals were buying it a lot and telling me and project managers, oh, this is so helpful because it reminded me of what I forgot. And it also gave me a way to make this relatable to my clients so they understand. And I was like, cool.
Awesome. again, great feedback to be getting. And I think I have a few presents for small business owner friends of mine in the works. So it's great because it's always challenging, I find, to have that conversation. And then it's like, well, I can go on FEMA.gov. And I'm just like, that's a step, but...
I even had someone say to me, they go, why are you starting a business like this? I said, what do you mean? They go, FEMA has everything free online. I go, do you cut your own hair? Do you go to court by yourself?
Yeah.
It's hard to do it by yourself.
It's amazing. Yeah, I agree. Well, hey, I could talk to you about all of this all night, but wanted to give you a chance. Is there anything else that you want to share with the audience that we haven't gotten a chance to touch on yet today?
I do. I was thinking about this because we're talking about whole community and business continuity. FEMA, while they do promote whole community response and they do want to include businesses, one of the things that they're afraid of, and they actually have published this sentence, basically, I'm not doing it verbatim, but they're afraid that business continuity practitioners and professionals are going to put their client and their profit before helping out the community. And I say maybe that's one or two or three businesses. Don't let a couple ruin it for everybody else. If you don't know, Anheuser-Busch, I've been to their factory or plant in St. Louis. Mm-hmm. When there's a disaster, what is one of the main ingredients of beer? It's water. They will actually stop producing beer and put water in cans and deliver them to places. If Budweiser can do it, businesses can do it. So it's really just me saying, please prove FEMA wrong. Get involved with the local community. If you do it early enough and you have working groups or whatever, just get involved. Prove FEMA wrong. And that would go such a long way into making sure that everybody gets through a disaster and comes out better on the other end.
Mm. And I know so many of professionals in our field that in their spare time, whatever that is, they volunteer with their local emergency management teams and that as well, or Red Cross or, other organizations. So, it's distressing really to hear that is the stated, viewpoint. But yeah, let's definitely prove them wrong. I'm all for that. Hey, before we close out tonight, do you have a fun fact that you want to share?
I do. I'm a uber nerd, so I have went ahead and I studied formally 7 different languages, and I'm not including English in that.
Okay. Which one do you feel like you're most fluent in or enjoy the most?
Because I studied studied French for 4 years, Swedish for a year and a half, and then I did intensive Spanish for a summer, and then I did Hebrew for like a year because I just was bored and wanted to learn a language that read right to left. And then I did Japanese for a semester that I got broken up with, so I don't remember any of that. And then, let me see. And then people are now including programming languages. So Turbo Pascal, if we're going way back to the mid-90s, and SQL, which I learned in 2020.
Erika, what's the one that you've found that you've used the most? Just out of curiosity.
Probably... I probably use Swedish and French and Spanish the most just because of where I've traveled, but I'll translate into multiple levels before I get to the final one. My one friend was with me in Spain. She's like, that's funny what you just said. I was like, why? She goes, well, you said the sentence mostly in Spanish, but then there was some Swedish, I'm assuming they're Swedish because they sounded Germanic. And I was like, probably.
Nice. Excellent. Hey, it's all there in your head. So, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with the audience. And where can people find you if they either want to engage you for your service or they want to learn more about what you're doing? Yeah,
so you can go to my website, www.eaasc, make sure that C's in there.com, or email me at info@eaasc.com. If they want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I do ask that you send a message with the connection request. I get a lot of naked requests and I tend not to accept them. So I'm like, what is this for? So please just at least say hi if you're going to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Great. And I'll make sure to link that in the comment section below, along with the link for your book. And thank you again. Want to thank the audience for listening in. Always love to have you with us. And thank you, Erika, for coming on. We'll definitely be following your work going forward in the future. Love to have you back on sometime.
Thank you so much.